Good morning, Namibia. Welcome to a special edition of the Sport Breakfast Show, your trusted source for all things sports. I am Michelle Shapange, coming to you live, that is on NBC2. And today we reflect on the life and the legacy of a true giant, Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma, our founding father and first president, who passed away last Saturday in Windhoek. And today we will be reflecting on his life. Today he was also a more than leader. He was a symbol of unity, strength and resilience. And his role in liberating our country in 1990 also paved the way for the growth of Namibian sports, allowing our athletes to compete on international stages. Today, we explore how his leadership helped shape the sports landscape in Namibia and how his vision of a nation building through unity continues to inspire generations of athletes. Joining me in the studio today are some of Namibia's finest minds in sports. I am very, very honored to be joined. That is by Dr. Ndeulipula Hamutumwa, who is the president of Namibia National Olympic Committee. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here.
Yes, I'm also, of course, joined by the lovely Julian Garrises, who is a well-known football analyst and former player herself. Thank you so much for joining us today, Julian.
Thank you for having me.
And then, of course, Matthew Haikali, a well-known football analyst and as well a former player. He's a respected as well as an administrator. You're a sports administrator joining us today to reflect on the life of our late founding president. Thank you so much for joining us and good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's get straight into things, because when we talk about the life of our founding president, where do we even start when we talk about the sports, when we talk about where he started off not just during and after independence, but also before that? Matthew, as someone who has been deeply involved in Namibian sports, how would you describe Dr. Nujoma's influence on development of sports in Namibia post-independence?
I think it's important if you look at an icon, the magnitude of the founding president. It's always important to be able to reflect on where the struggles, but also his role in making sure that we are here today, sitting, not only us, but also for Namibians as a whole. And also for somebody who was enthusiastic himself, excuse me, as an avid lover of sports. And we all know that a lot of the times, I think he used to do a lot of walks, although he was into recreation, but he's somebody who had set the stage for us to be able to participate in sports. When he took power, some of the things that he initiated. Yeah. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have our ministries of education, yes, our ministry of sports, that set the foundation for some of the legislations. As a collective, obviously, and somebody whose leadership has paved the way for sports in this country to grow. We can't, I don't know where to start, where to end. His legacy will continue. And it's important also, there are things that he would have wished to have in place, yes, that leaves us with a responsibility for us to be able to continue. And my colleagues will be able to tell you some of the things that he aspired. One of the things that I loved about the founding president was his love for grassroots development. I mean, it's if you think he would go to be able to be involved in grassroots developments, especially sports, he would take his time, showed you the love he had for sports. A lot of people think the president was only about the gold medals, because that's when the gold medals came in, the athletes went to see him. But he took his time to go and get involved and encourage grassroots sports.
Now, Julian, you were a part of Namibian football during its early years of independence. How did Dr. Nujoma's leadership particularly impact local footballers and the formation of a post-independence national team?
You know, you see, one thing from Dr. Sam Nujoma is he took decisions. And when he took decisions, he go whether it's popular or unpopular. And one of the biggest decisions he took was for brave warriors, For them to participate, it must be gazetted and it must be endorsed by the cabinet. And there's one decision that has made opportunities, great opportunities for brave warriors. But looking back is one thing you must remember. When our people came back to Namibia, there was already some of the kids who played football, male and female, in that countries they were born. Remember, some of them were born in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola. The countries that had opened doors for us. And when they came, when we started women's football, when we mentioned it, it was sort of new to those within the country. But those who were outside said, but we played. And that's what, where you see how involved he was. I can tell you stories of his involvement with us. You see, to change, to unite a nation, you need sports. Everything comes to a standstill. And then sports take place, and after that we go and fight. That's what you see in Ivory Coast. That's what they did when they wanted to play. But looking at sport, remember, still people will talk about if we were independent in the 80s, we could have been already at World Cups and AFCONs. But it was not to be. So we have to wait 1990. When 1990 came, we said, because in the country there was sports, especially rugby was played, but then you needed to be part of the teams in South Africa to play internationally or to represent South Africa. That's what happens. But with us, we know football, because the sports for blacks was netball and football. Yes. That's what we knew. And then there was no opportunities to go out and play. But when he came through, many things have to happen. You need to have structures. You need to have institutions that will run these sports. And that's how everything started. Many people don't know there was a Namibia woman in sports that was created through him. And it was clear. He was clear on his advice and guidance when what must be done. You cannot just start playing in sports. There must be structures. Because I know when we started women's football, we needed to go to Magnum Tools, that's where NFA office was. So for us to be recognized. So then when he came, there were structures. We got sports ministry, where you have your office, where the football was run from. We're next to Nictes now. But then looking at participation, you could not participate without a passport. You cannot participate if you are not recognized in any country. Because you are a nation, but you are not recognized. So then he came through, applications must be done. We must be recognized in any sport code, whatever we can do. Whether it is just a local sport that we are doing, recognition must come. And then the big thing during his time was regional sports. You must represent your region for you to select for the national sport. It's not just everyone comes to Windhoek, play for any team in Windhoek, and you become a national team player. No. You must come through a structure. And that's how development was done. But then, when it comes to participation, it was not easy. And it needed political will for us to be recognized as a country, for us to be recognized and accepted in the international level. And that's how the doors was open. And that's why you see the first people who participated was 1991. It will start with athletics.
Wow. Beautifully said that, Julian. Honestly, so powerful. Now, Dr. Namibia qualified, or rather made the debut of the Olympics in 1992. That was in Barcelona, just 2 years after independence. How do you believe Dr. Nujoma's impact ensured that the country gained that recognition for you to be able to take part in the Olympic Games just shortly after its independence?
I think it's important, maybe before I answer that question, it's important as a student of history. It's important first we start from the beginning. Just to give context and maybe just draw some line from what Matthew was talking about. You know, in 1948, the South African government then introduced a very demising, oppressive system called apartheid. And this apartheid system was an academic exercise that dehumanized people, at the same time suppress human spirit. And our people were subjugated by this horrible system to such an extent that, fast forward, the Oriental plan segregated the people into Bantustans. And this discouraged people from playing sport of their choice. And it's important to understand that when we became independent, we came from a system that was very segregated, and rightly so, it did not give people an opportunity to broaden their talent and their experience. So in 1990, even before we went to the Olympic Games, I think it's important to get the context correct. What independence brought, it brought an opportunity for freedom. Freedom to be associated with any of your choice of preferences, such as whether you want to go to a specific schools or a specific clubs, and also just your ability to be able to become or to have a sense of being a human being. And I think that is really the context of what freedom and independence brought. So even before we went to the Olympic Games, what the Constitution allowed was for society to be able to organize themselves. And even before we even went to the Olympic Games, you must remember that for the first time, Dr. Sam Nujoma had to find a formula that is able to unite people. And that formula was first, the government had to identify first the security of the country. And that's what they had to do to make sure that first they transform the army force so that everybody is integrated into one security system. The second one was the issue around uniting society, and they had to use sport. So going to the Olympic, to answer your question, was that Dr. Sam Nujoma had to first and foremost create institutions such as the National Olympic Committee and the Sport Council. I'll come back to talk about the Sport Council later, because it is very important that we bring context on what this gallant freedom fighter did coming out of the bush. So he created institution. The Olympic Committee was registered, where Dr. Sam Nujoma mobilized like-minded people to travel to Switzerland to go and deposit our application to the Olympic Games so that we become members of communities of the Olympic Games. And we also became members and families of the Commonwealth Federation. Once we then became members of the International Olympic Committee, we had now the opportunity to send our first Olympians to the Olympic Games in 1992 in Barcelona. So I think that history is very important on what the founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma, has done to first and foremost recognize that we must create institutions that are robust, that are able to respond to the global community. And that is really the reason why we went to the Olympic Games.
Wow. I mean, when it comes to even just the younger generation, we talk about growing up in a different era that might not have been under our late founding president. A lot of people don't even know the context of that. Thank you so much, Dr. We'll be, of course, getting into more of this discussion. But moving on, the Namibia Motorsport Federation has joined the nation in mourning. That is the passing of the Namibia's founding president, Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma, a towering figure whose impact and leadership not only secured independence, but also paved the way for unity, opportunity, and progress in all spheres, including sport.
The Namibia Motorsport Federation Secretary General Derek Jacobs expressed his heartfelt condolences, reflecting on Dr. Nujoma's legacy as a pillar of strength and a beacon of hope.
What sportsmen and women can take from his legacy in this country is the unification, not only of the country, as I mentioned earlier, but of sport as well. You know, that is, like I said, it's evident here. You can see everybody competes together, compete against each other, and it doesn't matter from which background, walk of life, or color you come from. And I think if there's one thing that Namibia succeeded in doing and keeping that way is, based on his legacy, is to unify this country. The Namibian Motorsport Federation would like to pass our sincere condolences onto the Nujoma family and friends in this difficult time. We will keep them in our thoughts and our prayers, but despite him leaving this earth, he will never be forgotten, especially with us as a sports entity in this country, because of what he did in this country.
The Federation's president, Daniel Shongarero, currently abroad on business, echoed these sentiments in a poignant tribute. Independence meant more than just political freedom. It meant breaking barriers in sport. It meant that every Namibian, regardless of background, had the right to compete, to dream, and to represent our nation on the world stage, he stated. Shongarero emphasized that Dr. Nuyoma's message of reconciliation transcended politics, deeply influencing sports governance. Because of his leadership, doors opened for those who had been sidelined. His vision ensured that talent, not history, determined who got to serve, lead, and compete, he added. As the motorsport fraternity and the wider sporting community reflects on this immense loss, one truth remains: Dr. Sam Nujoma was more than a statesman. He was a force of unity, a champion of equality, a leader who understood that sport, like freedom, belongs to all.
Absolutely beautiful piece that is, I mean, the impact that he truly had, that is of our past, rather, founding father who just passed on. Again, just to bring it back to my lovely analysts, back to you, Julene, when we talk about the impact of Dr. Sam Nujoma on sport particularly, his leadership, the landscape of Namibian sports, particularly in terms of inclusivity as well as opportunity, how do you think the role that he played really brought that to light?
Yes, you see, within sports, we have this motion that only men must play these sports, women must play these sports, and we have left out the people of disabilities. And this one sport that came through as one of the best of creme de la creme sports, that when you sport para, you are expecting a medal. That is the inclusivity of what is came through. We have now Special Olympics that came through now, where you would take them to United Kingdom, Germany, and they came with medals. So the inclusivity is something he have encouraged. Now, at the end of the day, that is one thing where we are seeing that other sports are also trying to go that route, because whenever we have come with inclusivity, we are opening up for everyone within that area. Because remember, some towns or some regions can only do certain sports because of facilities. But now when you open it up for everyone, everyone will become, you don't need to be an athlete, you can become also an administrator with your abilities that you are having. So that is one message that he has left, that sport is for everyone. Everyone must be given the opportunity. go and represent this beautiful country of us. At the end of the day, it's about growth for each individual, how you grow within that sport. They give opportunity to you. You must know what you are doing with that opportunity. And at the end of the day, you change your life, you change your family life, and you become a beacon of hope within your community. Because if Julian can do that, I would like to do that. You become a role model and you become a mentor in the long term. But at the end of the day, that is what he wanted. He wants us, everyone in this country must get opportunity when it comes to sports.
Matthew, Daniel Changarero there mentioned that independence opened doors for so many Namibians in sports governance particularly. Can you share specific examples of how this transformation took place?
You know, just maybe before I answer that, maybe listening to Julene, you know, I'm just thinking, I think one of the legacies of our founding president would have made us very patriotic, all of us. Whether you are an athlete, you are an administrator, you are a family member. I mean, you were talking earlier about Barcelona, you know, when Frankie Fredericks was running against the Magic Johnsons and them, I think all of us, I mean, we are at home, you are not at the field, but after the race, you know, you go into any neighborhood, you know, everybody was just shouting. And I think that's something that as Namibians we should be proud of, because he instilled that in all of us. You know, when the Brave Warriors is playing, everybody wants to wear that jersey. You know, if the team that was in Croatia, our hockey team, I mean, before, you know, you would say it's those ones.
Yes.
But I think that's something that as Namibians, I think we should be proud of, that has been one of those legacies that we need to be able to uphold and continue to live with. Because it's brought us together. Julene is talking about the Paralympics. I mean, before, people would think people with disabilities, you know, will be hidden. I mean, when Johanna Benson crossed that line, I mean, everybody, it doesn't matter where you are in this country, you know, the whole sense of patriotism. So when you want to mention individuals, I mean, I can't even, because it's not, a lot of the times we focus on the athletes, but you need to be able to think of the families that are affected back home. We need to be able to think of the administrators who have pushed those agendas so that to be able to prepare. I mean, Ndeuli needs to be able to explain to you, Doctor, how the transformations, not only of the institutions, has paved the way for athletes. I mean, when Julius Indongo won the... I mean, all of us. That's the legacy.
Yes,
you know, that's why celebrating his life should make us happy, because he's left us with something that nobody can be able to take away. I remember at Sam Nujoma during the Women Championship, when it was held here by COSAFA, for the first time, you know, we had goosebumps when all Namibians at the stadium were singing the national anthem.
Yes.
Now,
2014.
if you are in that stadium, it's an amazing feeling. So you can't be able to pinpoint, because everybody has played a role. There are those who have been given the responsibility for bringing the medals, but there are those who are behind, who have made that these medals come to. I mean, I'm just thinking, if you talk about the Paralympic, I mean, Michael Hamukwaya, who's the coach, I mean, he was given an opportunity because of the founding president's, you know, initiative for him to be trained. And when he came back, he's invested so much that we have the Paralympics. Colin Benjamin, who took us to the round of 16 for the first time for the Brave Warriors, it's because of the opportunities that were given so that he could be able to go and play in Germany. I don't know.
Yes.
If I want to continue, it's...
No, I agree. I mean, just even some of those visuals that were on your screen now of some of those, like you talked about the goosebumps, Matthew, some of those matches from the early 90s, those were prominent moments in Namibian sports that really shaped the foundation of Namibian sport. Doctor, we were speaking before, you were speaking about the Namibia Sports Council, because when we talk about people, especially of a certain generation, probably the younger generation, we talk about the sports, what what is the Sports Council? We only know of the Namibian Sports Commission. Can you just shed light on exactly how that came about? How did that transcend that whole movement for it to now become where it is today?
So what happened was that at independence, the country was very angry. People were paining. People were broken. Society were disorganized. And what the president did, first and foremost, that was very fundamental, was first and foremost to create the Ministry of Youth and Sport. It was not there. There was no structure like that. Because before independence, there was a structure called the Sport Rand that was predominantly a body that only organized white community sport. But at independence, after the ministry was established, there were a few things that the visionary leader did. He brought every members of communities together by forming up what you call a working group. Now, this working group now comprises of black administrators and white administrator. He locked them into one room and say, we have one opportunity now to organize ourselves. And it was on that basis that the Sport Council was created. So a body that was now for the first time administered by all the races. At that time, led by Elliot Hiskia, very prolific footballer at the time. And then the Opapa Shipanga, the Kale Schaefer, the Quinton Steele Bottas, you know, the Pete Duplessis, Louis Millers came in one room. Dr. Sam Nujoma said, you are not going to live if you are not going to give me one formula. Unite yourself and come up with a body. That's how the Sport Council was formed with two mandates. One mandate was to say, you must now come up with a sport policy. And that sport policy, the visionary, Dr. Sam Nujoma, allowed them to go and benchmark. And they got colleagues from Zimbabwe by the name of Charles Zimba with the UK Sport to help us to create a policy. And that policy was now very instrumental through the Sport Council that now started to create content and structure. Okay? Content and structure. And that's where now we started to talk about institutions such as the Olympic Committee, the National Federation, NSSU, and so forth, under the auspices of the National Sport Council. And that is the body that we eventually transformed into what you call the Sport Council, the Sport Commission, when an act of parliament was gazetted that birthed a new structure that now is regulated through a law. But what was very fundamental and which is also very important, what Dr. Sam Nujoma did, and again as students of history, and I hope that we continue to learn, is that because he wanted to foster a spirit of national reconciliation, his fundamental question is, how should I do it? Then he said, we need to organize a school sport. But because there was no structure like that, he directed cabinet, the cabinet directive that was signed by our current president, who was the secretary of cabinet, Dr. Nangolo Mbuba, to create what we call the school sport, the NSSU. And Dr. Nujoma felt it was important to create a structure like that so that reconciliation starts at the grassroots through our school system. Because you cannot change a broken society if the foundation is not correct.
Yes.
For the first time now, students now, or learners, were able to go to the ball games, to competitions, where they are no longer looking at themselves as these broken youth that are inheriting the dividend, the bad dividends of apartheid. Remember I told you that apartheid was an academic exercise. that was created to oppress the human spirit. So Dr. Sam Nujoma felt that if you create an environment that in all its manifestation is about building a nation, you need to use a vehicle like sport. So fast forward, we created now these two bodies. First, the National Council, we transformed into the National Sport Commission. But what is also very fundamental, and we don't speak about it, the current president-elect went to Beijing in 1995, where she attended what you call the Beijing Conference on Women, Women Empowerment. Currently, it's called now, famously called the Beijing Platform. In the Beijing Platform, a decision was made to say we need to foster and promote women in leadership. Dr. Sam Nujoma saw it fit to say the sport policy and the Sport Act must make room to accommodate what my colleague was talking about now, a body that is recognized by law that promotes and encourages women in leadership and women participation. So all of these are strong institutions that were created, not only institutions, but backed up by very solid policy and regulations that now gave opportunity to what Matthew was talking about, opening up the sport to the world, where opportunities were given, not only to the athletes, to the administrators. Frankie's Fredericks would have never been known, because before independence, there was a campaign that was running that said, you cannot run organized sport in a disorganized community. And on that basis, South Africa, that was colonizing Namibia, was isolated by the world. So there were what we call sport boycotts. And Namibians, therefore, under the subjugation of apartheid, could not have the opportunity to travel outside. So to answer your question, those bodies were created out of strong visionary, people of character like Dr. Sam Nujoma, who does not see at the verge of his eyes, but look with an eagle eye on how Namibia should look like under one umbrella and under one people with a common destiny. That is the leader we had.
Absolutely. There, Doctor, will be, of course, getting into more, especially that you mentioned the great Frank Fredericks as well. We'll be diving more into his story. But moving on, following the passing of Namibia's founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma, on the February the 8th, many Namibians from all walks of life have shared their thoughts as well as their condolences on the loss of the former statesman. Let's take a listen to exactly what they had to say. Joseph Bernard, particularly founder and owner of the Kilimanjaro boxing stable in the Oshana region, also joined others in honoring the memory of the Dr. Sam Nujoma. Let's take a look.
Bernard highlighted the significant role Dr. Nujoma played in inspiring Namibians to excel in all spheres of life, including sports. His remarks reflect the widespread admiration for the founding president's legacy, which continues to resonate across the nation.
In the realm of sport, Dr. Nujoma was a strong advocate for the empowerment of Namibian athletes. He recognized the power of sport in uniting the nation and inspiring the youth under his leadership. Namibia saw the development of various sport structures, including boxing, which has since grown to become one of the country's most celebrated disciplines. His support for sport excellence helped pave the way international platform, bringing pride and recognition to our country. Me, as Joseph Bernard, I've been an Olympian, 96 Atlanta. I was a Commonwealth Games, 94 Canada. I've been fighting in all Africa Games in Zimbabwe, qualifying for the Olympic in Tunisia. I spent my time in Cuba preparing for the Olympic Games, and more fights in Africa. So it have, through our former President Dr. Sam Nujoma, we become champions. And that's why we have traveled all the whole world. We're becoming famous in athletes. It's because of Tatesema. If it wasn't him who fought for this country to become free, we could not be going outside, because before that we were only fighting in Southwest Africa, which is Namibia, and South Africa, which they call Springbok team. So we never know about Olympics. So this comes after our independence, which was brought by our former president, the late our president Sam Nujoma. On behalf of our entire MTC Kilimanjaro Boxing Club, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to the family of our founding president, Dr. Sam Safishuna Nujoma, especially to Madam Kovambo and the children. His passing is great loss, not only to his loved ones, but to the entire nation of Namibia.
As Namibians continue to mourn, tributes like these serve as a reminder of the enduring impact of Dr. Nujoma's leadership and vision.
Absolutely amazing stuff there. Matthew, when it comes to boxing, Namibia is known as, I mean, arguably one of the best, that produce some of the best boxers in the world, and even here in Africa and globally. When we talk about the role of Dr. Nujoma's, just not policies, but in general, when it comes to the sport of boxing, what do you think was his greatest impact on boxing particularly?
Yeah. No, it's important. I think Doctor maybe might have some deeper insight because there was an act that was passed specifically for boxing and wrestling. Because again, the visionary leader, so look, there is a potential for this country to be able to go global. Apart from athletics, I mean, the Harry Simons, when you think of boxing, you think of Harry Simon. When you go anywhere around the continent, when you say Namibia, either it's Frankie Fredericks or it's Harry Simon when it comes to boxing. It was an opportunity to be able to know. He foresaw the potential that this could be able to change the lives of a lot of young people in this country. I mean, if that legislation was not put in place, you are Nestor Tobias providing the platform for us, our youngsters, to be able to do what they do best. The capacity building that provided them to train both as administrators, as coaches, and also provided the private companies to be able to make an investment to be able to make sure that these athletes are able to travel the world. You know, that's what I was saying earlier on. It opened the doors for everybody. And it's not only that. Right now, I mean, some of us sit as educators, and we've sat in classes where the like of Julius Indongo talks about the opportunities that were provided for them. They are 3 world-time champions, and they are grateful not only for the boxing, because they're saying it's because of the policies that were put in place that he is able to study and be able to become somebody who can be able to pass that knowledge. Again, when we talk about the legacy, it's I think being patriotic, that comes to mind, and the opportunities that have been presented to us, it's up to us to continue building on that, because like Doctor said, he had a vision, and we need to be able to continue following that vision to be able to make Namibia a sporting nation.
Gillian, when we talk about boxing, I remember I was watching something and talking about how Dr. Nujoma always gave support. And support isn't just about implementing policies. It's about showing up behind the scenes and being able to give that motivation. And a lot of boxers, they talk about how he always showed up and he would give that advice, call them over at State House, or maybe rather give them a call and ask them, give them that motivation or advice. What do you think that the importance of that was for Dr. Nujoma leading into the boxers?
He was involved in boxing. You can see every boxer who speaks said before they leave the country, they will go for his blessing. He was on top of information. So every boxer will go and say, Dade, we need your blessing. We are representing the country. And he was more on discipline. So anyone who go out of this country must know you must be disciplined. That's one thing he really talk about. If you are not disciplined, there's no way you can go and represent the country in an ordinary manner. Because you can go out there and end up in a club and forget you were supposed to do ABCD. So this is one thing that, and you could see when the boxers talk about how he also sponsored them. Even Ananias talked about his first spikes was sponsored by the president. So it's just not, there was also care and direction. He wanted them, even after motivating them, he wanted them also to be the best. He let you believe that you are the best. You must be the best. You must believe you are the best when you represent the country. It doesn't matter whether this is a legendary person you are going to box against. It's the fact is you are representing the country. You are having the flag on your chest of the country. When you go out there, it must be about Namibia. It must be about your preparations. And discipline was one of them. If you discipline yourself when he blessed you, when he gives you that token of appreciation through through cash, then it also motivates you and say, this man has a plan. He believes in me. It's just that belief. He said, you can be even have just a potential, but the moment he talks to you and you are done, you believe I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world because with women's football also, we have that experience. We play regional. That's what one thing that he told us was play. The regions must come through. When we came through, we play at Independence Stadium, our final game. The final was played by Comas and Karas. Karas won this game. But at the end of the day, everyone was a winner. Everyone was motivated. The president said, you are good. You can go and perform better. Just go, don't stop training. So it's not only the boxers that have the opportunity to be blessed by him, but everyone else around him knows what sports means to him. He understands sports because sports is one avenue that you can come out of poverty. And the moment you focus on sports and you are serious, you can become what you want to become.
Now, Doctor, before we get to you, I just quickly want to, of course, move on to this. And when we come back, we'll deeply dive into the conversation, more coming up. But during a memorial service held by the sporting world at the residence of the late President Dr. Sam Nujoma, different sport icons shared their heartfelt condolences towards His Excellency for his contributions to sports in the country. Let's take a look.
My spikes that I won with a gold medal in Rio 2016, it was a bit torn because that spike, I bought it in 2011. And then I won 2 bronze medals and a gold medal from the money I got from Dr. Sam Nujoma. From my side, and my colleagues, Paralympian athletes, otwadengwa pedu, ongula sondaka eshitu dana kucham, tate kulu katun navals, tate kulu okwetu fiapo, onsezia tsikoruinga mevi, ombudu ya tarara. Etungwa jasi kirilombe po jetu thigipo, katunanke ne tunakuninga. Rest in peace.
President Nujoma clearly guided us that the development of sport to the broader and excluded communities in Namibia was a non-negotiable and should be the top priority in addressing the roadmap for sport going forward. This also included the development of sport outside of Windhoek, and his challenge was that we have to take sport to the communities, the towns and the regions throughout Namibia and not being left as dominated in the pre-independence Windhoek mainly.
One of His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma most enduring contribution to sport was his commitment to inclusivity and accessibility for people living with disability in sport. Dr. Sem Safeshuna Nujoma, his legacy forever inspires us as we strive towards creating more opportunities for athletes across all levels, both local, national, international, and ensuring that every citizen can enjoy access to sports without any barriers.
His leadership was pivotal in fostering a society where the rights of people with disabilities were not merely acknowledged, but actively protected. His tireless advocacy led the development of policies that integrated people with disabilities into the social, economic, and cultural fabric of our nation, breaking down long-standing barriers that kept them marginalized and excluded. Under his guidance, Namibia became one of the first African countries to enshrine the rights of people with disabilities in its national framework. The government established the crucial initiatives in education, healthcare, and employment opportunities for people with disabilities, ensuring that individuals with disabilities had the same opportunities to succeed and contribute to our country's growth. These efforts paved the way for a more inclusive and just society.
Lovely stuff there. So beautiful to see the many faces of sport, those from that were under his tenure, who were there under his administration, those who are still with us right now, to be able to reflect on his amazing legacy that he left behind and the impact that he had on sports. Now, Doctor, before the insert, we were talking about his impact on boxing particularly. Can you just share with us what that looked like, especially during, I would say, maybe before the 2000s, during his administration for boxers? What did that really look like?
See, when we talk about boxing, we should be able to classify the two classes, the amateurs and the professional. What Dr. Sem Nujoma did just shortly after independence is to reactivate his diplomatic arenas. And as you know, Namibia and Cuba have been all-weather friends. History is very clear what Cuba has done to Namibia. So shortly after independence and into the period between 1990 to 2000, the government, under the leadership of Dr. Sem Nujoma, brought a lot of Cubans and doctors to Namibia to help us as part of their solidarity programs. So Namibia benefited through the Cuban program. And it was on that basis that there were a lot of Cubans that came here as coaches that started to develop our boxing system. So that history is very important. And fast forward, when we went to the 2002 Commonwealth Games in Manchester, there was a decision that was made by cabinet and through then the director of sport, Dr. Vey, to identify one of what we'll then say one of the transformers of boxing by the name of Ambrosius Kanji. Ambrosius Kanji was given a program to run boxing. And that boxing was attached to a Cuban coach. And they went through all the region, through the support of government under Dr. Sem Nujoma, to do what you call regional boxing programs. And it was out of those programs that we had solid, qualified national programs that were able to identify people like Ambuda. Ambuda went through those programs, and then we took him to the Athens Olympic Games. So credit must be given to Dr. Nujoma for having understood that after waging the liberation struggle with Cuba, the post-development with the help of Cuba through the sport development was very important. So we had so much amateurs that went through the ranks into the All-African Games, Commonwealth Games, and in the Olympics. It is this crop of boxers that went through the Cuban Namibian Solidarity Program that then became professionals and they became world championship. So we must give credit to the leadership of Dr. Sem Nujoma by recognizing that the development of sport, like what the Chinese will say, cannot be done through what you call a microwave approach. You eat, you warm up food when you want to eat. It's a long term. So boxing, initiated from the philosophy of understanding the opinion of Fidel Castro, that you use a sport to unite people. So Dr. Sem Nujoma understood that philosophy, that we need to use boxing to unite and to reconcile our nation, but at the same time also bring in the commerce and the economics around sport. And that is why you see so many boxers right now have made a living. If anything is to also credit people like Nestor Tobias and calculate the contribution of boxing to our sport GDP and its impact on our socio-economic development, you realize that the seed that Dr. Sem Nujoma planted, by understanding that you identify and you partner with the best, because boxing is such a big phenomenon in Cuba, more specifically from the amateur level. And credit to Dr. Vey, credit to Ambrosius Kanji, the late. And may his soul rest with those, and of course, under the leadership of then Honorable John Mutorwa. Those are the people that followed the thinking of Dr. Sem Nujoma, that we can only build boxing if we partner with the best. That is the history.
Absolutely, Doctor. I wish we could go on and on and on. So much to learn about the founding president, especially when it comes to his impact in sport. But we would probably never finish if we got into all of that. So I just wanted to get back to Matthew as well as Julene. I mean, just shortly, before we do conclude today's program, what do you think, briefly, is his impact really, what his legacy? When you talk about the legacy of the founding president on sport in the country, for the youth particularly, do you think would be the greatest thing he did? Very briefly.
I think for me, and what's coming from the three of us, I think it's important that the issue of grassroots development, which was his passion, I think from the onset, I mean, if you listen, the developments, NSSU, boxing, football, grassroots development is what he's leaving us with. And he says, look, if we want sports to flourish in these countries, we can't neglect the grassroots.
Julene, just shortly, you're always very big advocate for the minorities. You talk about, of course, the people living with athletes with disabilities. When it comes to, especially the young ones now, who are still to go out to the Olympics, perhaps the next ones, what advice would you give right now to that young athlete to just remember the impact of our founding president, very briefly?
You see, you must take yourself serious when you participate in sports, whether it's youth development. Now, at the end of the day, you must set up a calendar for yourself. Where do I want to be when I enter sports? It is what must I do to be in long term and benefit. Because there is in all the sports courses, there's so much benefits. Coaches that we are having, listen to them, because they know better. They might not have the same qualifications as you are having now, but they know better. Listen to the coaches. If there is a government program, it is a club program, it is a national call-up, honor them. Because that is your doors to become a better athlete and to become recognized, and also to change your life forever. Because through youth development, it came through. It doesn't matter whether the ability that you are having is secondary. It's what you are doing with the opportunities you are given. Because that opportunities is what will guide or make you to become a sports star for the country.
Doctor, just briefly, how would you describe, very briefly, Dr. Nujoma's legacy in sports? If we were to describe him very briefly, his legacy or his impact on sport.
He brought meaning to the concept of national reconciliation. He brought content to national reconciliation. Because to him, he knew that through sport, he can build a nation that was broken, that was divided, and that was angry, where there were a lot of mistrust. Through sport, he knew that one day we will use sport to reconcile our economic sector, which is still currently divided.
Absolutely, Doctor. Thank you so much for your input. Before we do, wrap up the show, let's have a look at some of those fixtures that you can look forward to. I mean, there are a couple of things that you can still look forward to that is in the world of sports this weekend. In the English Premier League, of course, Leicester City taking on Arsenal at past the hour of 2 o'clock. That is tomorrow. Aston Villa taking on Ipswich Town at 5 p.m. Fulham taking on Nottingham Forest at 5 p.m. as well. And then Manchester City, the defending champions, taking on Newcastle. That will be at 5 p.m. Some of those big games that you can really look forward to over the weekend in the English Premier League. And that's all we also had for you on today's Sport Breakfast Show. A big thank you to my amazing guests, of course, Matthew Haikali, Julian Garises, and Dr. Hamutumwa. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your insights. I absolutely, we have to continue these type of conversations, especially young people, to know exactly the impact of Dr. Nujoma's legacy on Namibian sports. So thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for that conversation. And with that, we've come to the end of today's program. Let us continue to honor Dr. Sam Nujoma's legacy by striving for, that is, excellence in sports and unity as a nation. Follow NBC on Sport, NBC Sport on all social media platforms for more updates and highlights as well. See you next week, same time, same place. Have a lovely, lovely, fantastic weekend, Namibia.